Hey there, what's up? My name's Goldie, and this is episode 1 of Culture Talx. This is going to be a series of videos where I just discuss trending topics on X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't know when we're going to stop saying that, but I've been meaning to start this series of videos for a while now. I actually had this logo and everything ready to go, but with the events that transpired today, I had to hop on and talk about this because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and it is very near and dear to my heart. So let's dive into it. Before we do, though, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, drop a comment, share this with your friends. Let me know what your thoughts are, and we're going to dive into it right now. So it was trending earlier. It's not trending anymore, but it's still in my For You page here, and it's regarding the CrossFit games that are happening in Fort Worth. Now, that's literally right down the street from where I live. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm very familiar with the lake that this event happened at. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the event, you can see here, I have it highlighted, CrossFit athletes tragic drowning at the games. So I have some thoughts on this I want to share with you. So here's the long and the short of it. Lazar Dukic, a Serbian CrossFit athlete, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, tragically drowned during the swimming portion of the 2024 CrossFit Games in Fort Worth, Texas. Dukic was seen struggling in the water before disappearing under the surface, prompting a search by divers and rescue teams. His body was later recovered from the Marine Creek Reservoir. The incident has raised concerns about safety measures at the event, with many expressing shock and grief over the loss of Dukic. Now, I don't want to dive into the videos. It's pretty upsetting, but you can look at it on your own if you'd like to. Basically, the videos show his final moments, and it really struck a chord with me to see that, because if you can't tell in the background behind me, I'm a competitor. I'm an athlete, and I like to consider myself a pretty high-level athlete. And the sport that I compete in primarily is triathlon. So obviously, I am swimming all the time. That consumes a lot of my time. And the lake that he died in is a lake that I am very familiar with. I've done many, many races in that lake, as you can see here. So I've been in the position that he was in. Now, I want to real quick kind of give a background, or obviously we know the story. Now, the event that he was competing in, this is directly from the CrossFit Games here. It was the first race of the day, and it looks like it was the first day of the competition here in Fort Worth. 7 to 8 a.m. It was the individual division, event 1, Lake Day in the Marine Creek Lake. So what that entailed was a 3.5-mile run followed by an 800-meter swim. Now, first of all, I'm not wildly familiar with CrossFit, so I'm just going to, establish that right off the bat. I don't know the ins and outs and the nuances, and I definitely don't know much about the CrossFit Games. But like I mentioned, what I do know is triathlon. And swimming, whether it's a part of a competition, whether you're doing it leisurely, open water swimming is no joke. Open water swimming is nothing to be taken lightly, and I've been actually at multiple races where people have died. So I know this comes as a shock to a lot of you who heard the news about this today. It's not a shock to me. I understand the severity of open water swimming, especially in a competitive atmosphere like that, because twice in my life, I have thought that the same thing was going to happen to me. There was one race that I did, and I'm not going to throw these race organizations under the bus. I believe they do the best that they can to a degree, and I'll dive into that in just a second here. But the one time that it happened to me, I was at a race in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and about halfway through a half-mile swim, I had a panic attack, and that had never happened to me before. I've been, competitively racing triathlon for about 8 years at this point, and of all the races I've ever done, that was the first time I ever had a true panic attack. Now, in that scenario, there was a kayaker that was able to come over to me, that was able to basically save me. I was flopped on the kayak. yes, it was humiliating because it was a very high-level competition, but I'd rather be humiliated than dead. I thank that person for basically saving my life that day. I went on to finish the race. I collected my breath. I got my heart rate back down, and I finished the race. So that was the first time that it happened to me. The second time it happened to me, obviously I'm alive to tell the tale, but it didn't go as smoothly as the first time it happened to me. And this was, separated by a couple years. I race all the time. I compete for the amateur Team USA. You can see all the medals over there in the corner. I'm not a bad swimmer, but panic attacks do happen. Open water swimming in a crowd is a terrifying endeavor. It really is. You can ask the best swimmers in the world. It's happened to almost everybody. So the second time it happened to me was relatively recently, and I was in the water literally screaming for help, looking at the kayaks, and they didn't hear me. And I was probably about a similar distance away from the shore than this gentleman was who passed away in the race today. And it was definitely one of the moments in my life that I was fearful of death, to be perfectly honest. Once you start panicking, it's very easy to say, calm down, slow your breathing down. But when you're in the open water by yourself with no one to help you, and something I noticed in the videos today is that the racers didn't have wetsuits on. Wetsuits, for those who don't know, help with speed and buoyancy. It keeps your body floating. So you're not 100%, but it does help you stay buoyant, so you can really focus on just kicking and pulling. Obviously, it's still a very, very challenging endeavor to swim open water. And this was an 800-meter swim after a 3.5-mile run. And CrossFit is not known for its endurance. You can see I'm going to bring this back up here. You can see the list of events that we have here. So I don't know if all of these people were doing all of these today, but it looks like the second event that we're going to do is called the Hammer Down. 50 hammer strikes with a sledgehammer, 14 sandbag throws, get over the tire, I don't know what any of this means, or 5 tire flips. It's the Hammer Down. And then Amanda, 45, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5 reps for time of muscle ups and squat snatches. So obviously this is challenging, but this isn't something that looks like it takes a ton of time to do, like a triathlon. Like a sprint triathlon, which is what I primarily compete in, take about an hour, a little over. I can't imagine these events taking anywhere near that amount of time. So throwing endurance sports into this seems kind of odd, especially when you're making them swim after a run. I don't know who developed this, but I don't think that's a really smart way of going about challenging your athletes to compete. Like I said, being in the water without wetsuits, and these women and men, if you've seen CrossFit athletes, they're known for being absolutely shredded. They're very dense, they're muscular, and there's not a lot of fat to them, which means they sink. So swimming seems to be very counterintuitive to what they're doing. Obviously, when you watch the Olympics that are going on now, all the Olympic swimmers are shredded. That's because they're going all out in a pool for less than a minute or two. You know what I mean? So this just doesn't seem to be a very logical, common sense thing that they're making these athletes do. Now, I will, I'd like to cover, I see a lot of people talking about the kayakers were right there. How did they not notice them? I have a couple thoughts on that too. Again, I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this because I have a ton of experience in this world. The kayakers, and I don't know this, so I'm just putting it out there. The kayakers that are helping on the swim course, primarily in most events that I know of, are volunteer. Bless their hearts. They are volunteering their time for a sport that they obviously love if they're willing to go out and do that and help the athletes. But you kind of get what you pay for with that kind of stuff. You don't have trained professionals out there. You don't have the Navy SEALs out there protecting you. You have these people that are kind of just fans of the sport that are out there to just kind of lend a helping hand. But obviously that didn't come into play today. What was appalling to me today to see the video, again, I'm not going to show it on this discussion here, but it looked like a fan jumped in the water that recognized it to jump in and swim out to get him, and they were stopped. And that sends chills down my spine. How did a fan standing on the side notice that this athlete was struggling to swim when the kayakers that were mere yards away from them didn't? I think, and again, I'm not making an excuse, I'm just saying these are volunteers, so you're not getting the best of the best of the best. And ultimately, I feel that the liability will fall to CrossFit. I think it's an appalling, upsetting situation to see what happened. And I wanted to talk about this because, like I said, this happened to me. I know exactly what that feeling feels like, being in the middle of open water, feeling helpless, and there's nothing you can do to help yourself. You're just at the mercy of someone coming to save you. Luckily, the second time, like I said, that it happened to me, I was able to kind of flip over on my back. Now, for those listening, a bit of advice: if you do get into the situation, you want to roll over to your back, you want to puff your chest out and tilt your head back. That allows you to breathe and become a little bit more buoyant and allow the opportunity to catch your breath, slow that heart rate down, gather yourself, and then continue on. And I was able to do that. So obviously I'm very blessed and happy that did happen, and I was able to make it to safety and finish the race. But it's just a terrible situation overall to see it happen, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. Who's going to be held liable. I think it's obviously going to be CrossFit. I think, when a race puts on an event, there has to be no question that the athletes are safe. So I think moving forward, you may see a shift in triathlon and open water swimming competitions and apparently CrossFit competitions where they will hire trained lifeguards, or it will be a paid position to be out there to do that, because I think this just shows how important that position actually is. It literally is a matter of life and death. And if you're going to say, well, you pay them a bunch of money to be out there to save the athletes, and most of the time nothing happens, well, guess what? The one time that does happen, you're in for a wild lawsuit, but more importantly, you lost a life of one of your athletes today, which no athlete should ever go to a competition thinking that this could be the last day of my life. Sports are never that serious. So I wanted to hop on and talk about that. Unfortunately, this is the first episode of Culture Talx, and it had to be kind of a downer episode, but it's something I obviously very passionate about and just wanted to get off my chest to talk about. But that's it for the episode today. I just want to talk about that, and moving forward, what I'm going to do is look at trending topics on Twitter, pick one, and talk about it. It's not going to be daily, but they're going to be frequent. I'd love to do them daily, but I'm obviously very busy with a lot of different things, especially my triathlon training, so I just don't always have the time to really dive into these topics and produce the videos on a daily basis while they're topical and relevant. So stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, drop a comment, let me know what your thoughts are on this travesty that happened right down the street here today. So until next time, my name's Goldie. I'm here in Dallas, Texas. We'll see you soon for another Culture Talx.